Alright, so we're going to have a look at Phil's push press here. So let's just have a watch of Phil's push press, and then we'll come back and we'll analyze it. So I'll watch it in full speed. There we go. Okay, and we'll come back and we'll just watch it in slow motion now. Okay, great. So now I'm just coming back to the beginning now of his push press. Alright, so Phil's getting set here, okay? He's taking the bar, and just before he's about to start, you'll notice that he has a little habit here. If you look at those toes, the first thing that happens is before he starts his push press, whoop, they come up. Now what he's actually trying to do there is make sure that the weight distribution is on the back of his feet, of his heels, which is the right place to start loading the hamstrings. However, by lifting his toes like that up off the ground, what he's actually doing is reducing his base. So the surface area of his feet in contact with the ground is becoming smaller, and therefore he has actually less stability. Even though he's loading his hamstrings, he's less stability because there's less surface area in contact with the floor at that time. Now, he starts to go, oops, I'm going the wrong way. He starts to go into the dip there. So he raises his toes, and then he starts to dip. Now you'll notice the torso is nice and straight and up and down, and as he pushes those knees forward, he should actually stop there with that dip, and then from there move into the drive. However, Phil doesn't do that. He just continues and continues and continues. Now, I don't actually know how he's able to get to this depth and maintain an upright torso, so kudos to you for managing that, Phil. Now, in terms of the elbow position, we do know that Phil has some shoulder issues, and it's a minor piece there, but it would be nicer for him to have that left elbow a little bit further down, so that it's more or less equal to the right elbow there, with that forearm in a slightly more vertical position. Then he starts to drive up, and there's a very small rock forwards. I don't know if you can see that from the hips position, how his torso kind of rocks forward a little bit as he starts to drive up. Now you can see from this position here, he's driving up from the toes. It's no longer a posterior chain drive now. We're now into the quadriceps dominant drive. And as he drives up, we get to the full extension, and what happens here, the momentum of his extension, it's normal that it brings the feet up off the ground. What is not normal, however, from this position here, is that Phil actually jumps backwards. So let's just have a look down here at the feet, okay? And as he gets up off the ground, notice where the feet go? They're going back, okay? So he's actually jumping backwards, and we'll zoom back out. So he's jumping backwards there. And as a consequence of that jumping backwards, we now have a terrible, terrible receiving position with that bar overhead. There is no support for that bar directly through Phil's body. It's completely bowed. And so he's unable to properly drive that bar overhead and get into a good position here now, because we have now the weight on the toes. We also have the knees rolling in, which means that the ankles are now in a very weak position. They're unable to properly support the load in that place, in that position there. We have almost a muted hip going on here, with the angle and only flexion in the knee. We also, because of Phil's difficulty in getting his arms properly overhead, we also have a shoulder angle which is still not quite fully opened, which makes that very difficult for Phil to actually get to that lockout position. And the fact that his feet are behind him when he lands results in him having to step forward to try and maintain that load overhead in equilibrium. So he does actually manage to finish his press, which unfortunately is can't be considered a push press because he does rebend his knees through the movement. But there we have a nice full and lockout overhead once he gets stable there. Okay, so he is able to actually get to that position and lock everything out. Now, as he starts to bring the bar down, he makes the same mistake again, is that he starts to mute the hip. In other words, he's pushing those knees forward, but at the same time as pushing those knees forward, he's rocking with his torso backwards. Now, as that rock backwards means that he's unable to properly receive the bar. Okay, so really there, in that position there, what we would like to see is a torso-hip angle where the torso would actually be vertical and the hips would bend a little bit. And that would save him from having to dump the bar there at the end of his lift. Okay, so the repeat lessons, the main lesson for Phil, the first one would be to stop rocking back and reducing his surface area in contact with the ground, and therefore that would increase his stability with the load. The second thing is to not dip so deep. He's got to keep that dip much shorter, right to there, and then pop back up with as much aggression as he's able to generate and get that bar overhead. Now here, he never brings that chest back through, so we got to stop that jumping backwards, and we got to get him to bring that head back underneath the bar a lot earlier. That bar's already long cleared his head, and he can't get that full lockout with his head still behind the bar. So he's only, if you watch, he's only able to get lockout with those arms when that head starts to come forward. You see how that head is coming forward as he's pressing that bar to lock it out? That's when he's able to get that lockout. So Phil, get that head through into that locked out position a little sooner. Shorten your dip and keep your feet flat on the ground.